Well, joining me now from Derry is Caoimhe Archibald. She's a member of Northern Ireland's Legislative Assembly with the Sinn Fein party. From Cambridge, we have Gudgin. He's the former Special Advisor to the First Minister of Northern Ireland. And Ruth Taillon joins us from Armagh. She's the Director of the Centre for Cross-Border Studies. I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Brexit's turning out to be the worst divorce drama ever. And as this tumbles along, Northern Ireland becomes the focus of attention. Ironically, in the summer of 2016, nobody spoke about Northern Ireland, and it seems to be now at the centre. It's almost the Irish elephant in the room. Ruth, let me begin with you. Come that vote, what they're calling a meaningful vote on the Prime Minister's deal in Parliament, what do you want to happen?
Well, I think at this stage, the probably best outcome would be if the deal that is there on the table now, the withdrawal agreement, was passed. In an ideal world, it would be, some path towards Brexit not happening at all. But personally, I would have very little confidence in that being the final outcome. And I think from the Irish point of view, from the interests of people on the island of Ireland as a whole, the withdrawal agreement with the Northern Ireland protocol in it actually is the best option in terms of protecting the interests of people living on this island.
Caoimhe, a couple of months ago when I was in Northern Ireland speaking to Sinn Fein members, a lot of them said, yeah, Brexit's an opportunity for us because it highlights the contradictions of an Irish border and brings back to the table the concept or the prospect of a united Ireland, which is what Sinn Fein wants long term. Is all of this, all of the chaos that's ensuing right now, is it an opportunity for Sinn Fein? Are you looking at it positively?
So let's be very clear, there is no good Brexit. The people of the North voted to reject Brexit, and we have consistently said that is a mandate that must be respected. However, after 2 years of negotiation, there is a deal on the table in the form of the withdrawal agreement, which for us represents the least worst option in terms of the Brexit that is being pursued. It is the least worst option because it contains within it the backstop, which provides an insurance policy to protect the interests of the people on the island of Ireland. And we are very clear that the backstop can be in no way diluted and it can't be watered down. It has to be maintained, and the EU27 and the Irish government must be very firm on that position.
Gudgin, a lot of Northern Irish people on both sides of the aisle, whether Unionist or Republican, when I spoke to them, they told me they just want the politicians to get on with it. They're sick and tired of Brexit. They want to know what happens. What do you want to happen, Graham?
Well, I'd like Brexit to go ahead. I'm pro-Brexit in line with the majority party in Northern Ireland, the DUP. It has been a long, boring and very difficult process. And I think you're quite right to say that most people are absolutely bored with it and would like it to finish. But it is one of the biggest controversial issues in UK political history, certainly in my lifetime. I think we've got several rounds to go, unfortunately.
Yeah. Graham, has the DUP made it more difficult for Theresa May? Why didn't they just accept the deal and get on with it, rather than claiming that, well, because Northern Ireland might have some sort of special status within the UK, that's unacceptable, and they, like other Conservatives, added a few more hurdles in the way of Theresa May and her negotiations with Brussels?
It's because Theresa May's deal would leave Northern Ireland a semi-detached part of the UK. It would, in the long run, lead to customs barriers, for instance, between Northern Ireland and the rest of GB. So it's breaking up the UK customs union and economic union at the cost of keeping Northern Ireland within the EU. That's not what the DUP want, and of course they're opposing it.
Caoimhe, what do you make of that?
Well, the DUP do not represent the views of the majority of the people of the North on this issue. In fact, what Graham has said is out of step with the majority of business organisations, with civic society, with trade unions here, and with our farming organisations, who have all said that the backstop is the best that is an offer. And in terms of what the backstop represents, it wouldn't introduce any customs barriers. It would be simply a regulatory mechanism that would be in place, and there are already regulatory mechanisms in place between Britain and the island of Ireland.
Right. So, Graham, would you concede that backstop is a special plan for an island that has a special and unique history? It's compromised for now. Maybe for some it just kicks the can down the road for later generations to sort out. But because of the unique history, and especially the unique conflict in the north, you need a backstop, and you need something slightly different than the mainland UK. Would you concede that?
No, I don't agree with that. All of this is really not necessary. As long as we have a free trade agreement, which I think is in everyone's interest, the EU's interest, Ireland's interest, and the UK's interest. As long as we have that, we'll have no tariffs. The differences in standards, there are no differences in standards between Northern Ireland and the rest of the EU, or between the UK and the rest of the EU. So, and there's no need for any barriers at the border. Lots of trade experts, they've been giving hours of evidence to select committees in Parliament in London, saying, look, you can do all of this without any barriers. So this in many ways is a confected issue. Of course, Sinn Fein want to make it a bigger issue than it really is. And the Irish Republic have been doing that as well. But we can get through this with no checks on people, no checks on goods crossing the border, and hopefully with no tariffs.
Caoimhe Archibald, are you overhyping it as Sinn Fein for political purposes?
Absolutely not. The backstop, as I have previously said, represents an insurance policy to ensure that there's no return to border infrastructure on the island of Ireland, and to protect the integrity of the supply chain north and south. So it is an insurance mechanism there to protect the interests of the island of Ireland.
Ruth Taillon, what's your worst fear when it comes to the possibility of no deal, crashing out of Europe? What's your worst fear?
I think we will have a situation where there will be a resurrection of a lot of the problems we had. A lot of the focus has been on, will we have a visible border or not? Will there be trade checkpoints? But it will have also implications in terms of relations between the communities, very fragile structure. The protocol, Northern Ireland Protocol, is about a lot more than checkpoints at the border or trade at of goods. It also talks about the need to protect the Good Friday Agreement, which was the peace agreement of 1998, which was a very comprehensive agreement covering a lot of other things as well. And I think, we need to look at that. And, in terms of what Graham's saying about it being overhyped, it's not just Sinn Fein that is arguing for the border. Every other political party on this island, except the two unionist parties, mainly the DUP, have been making it very clear there is a very strong consensus on this. And, I can't overestimate the importance in terms of the implications for peace and community relations and the economic development and social development of this island. All the gains that have been made over the last 20 years because of the peace agreement, despite the ups and downs and the setbacks that there have been. I think Brexit could really damage all of those gains and set us back a long time in terms of not only relations between communities. We've already seen over the last 2 years European citizens who are many more on this island than there were. The demographics of the island have changed absolutely over the last 20 years. And we're going to see a lot more social tensions and social breakdown and all of that, I think, particularly within the northern part of the island.
So, Graham, we're hearing from Ruth that, yes, there's still a lot of tension. People carry a lot of baggage. I was recently in Belfast and in Derry and in some of the border areas. People have a lot of stories and they carry that baggage. Wouldn't no deal create just the perfect recipe to reignite some of those old conflicts?
Well, it's true. It doesn't do very much to get some people overexcited on the island. But when I talk to senior civil servants or to politicians, and to people like my old boss, Lord David Trimble, Nobel Peace Prize winner for his part in the Good Friday Agreement, they all say that any sort of mass violence or general violence is now out of the question. Gerry Adams of Sinn Fein, of course, says exactly the same. And he regards the fringe Republicans who might cause some problems as people with no real representation or support within the nationalist community. So there may be some problems, but actually there's not going to be very much to revolt against. I mean, if people aren't stopped, if lorries aren't stopped, it's really rather hard to see what the problem is.
Caoimhe Archibald, little to worry about.
Well, we have come a very long way over the past 20 years, and there isn't the support there for violence that there was in the past. People have invested heavily in the peace process, but you can't underestimate either the impact that the border and border infrastructure has on the psyche of people here. We are very clear that a no-deal Brexit would be catastrophic for the island of Ireland. And that's not just a Sinn Féin view. It's a view of our business community, of civic society, of trade unions, student unions, of our farming organisations. They all say that a no-deal would be disastrous. Tory Brexiteers and the DUP can't be allowed to drive our economy over the cliff and to put our peace process under threat, or to re-erect border infrastructure on the island of Ireland in pursuance of what is a right-wing Brexit agenda. We've been very clear, though, that in the event of a no-deal Brexit, that the question around the reunification of Ireland should be put to the people, because people have the right to choose which union it is that they want to belong to, because the EU have said that if the North of Ireland votes to be part of a united Ireland, then it would re-enter the European Union.
Ruth, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think it's important to say it's not just the violence of going back. Nobody, I think, expects to go back to the kind of level of armed conflict we had, but we will have a lot more inter-community tension because the economy here is so dependent on being an integrated all-island economy in so many ways. So if we have, if the real serious economic problems here, we're also then already having people, there's tensions around access to services, access to housing. It ties in as well with the British government's immigration policies as well, which are very hostile to people from outside. Excuse me. All of that is actually going to coalesce, I think, in the context of a no-deal Brexit to cause all sorts of social problems. So it won't be the same as when there was an armed conflict over the last that was there for the 30 years before the agreement. So, but
right.
It will be very different, and I think will be very, very nasty.
Okay, so Graham, we have both Caoimhe and Ruth both saying that Brexiteers are politically and ideologically willing to drive both economies, the UK and the Republic of Ireland, over a cliff for those ideological reasons, to go through with Brexit no matter what. Address that, please.
Can I first just respond to Ruth?
Go ahead.
She was overestimating, I think, the importance of the Republic of Ireland market, Northern Ireland's companies. Of the total sales of goods and services from Northern Ireland, only 7% go to the Republic of Ireland. 4 times as many go to go to Great Britain. Great Britain, of course, is a much bigger market and much more important to Northern Ireland. So it's the links there that are really economically important. But to address your question, there won't be any cliff edge. That's merely what they call project fear. It's just an exaggeration. Even if we don't have a free trade agreement, and I think eventually we definitely will have a free trade agreement, but even if in the short term we don't, the average tariff is only 3%, and we've already had a 15% depreciation of sterling, so that's really not going to trouble companies very much. All Northern Ireland companies and all companies in Great Britain are fully attuned to EU regulations because we're probably part of the EU, and therefore those companies will have no problem in meeting EU standards. So once again, I'd like to repeat, the difficulties here are hugely over-exaggerated, of course, for political effect, no matter what political parties say. And actually, even if we have no deal, there'll be some short-term difficulties. Some of the dairy producers in Northern Ireland, for instance, may have some short-term disruption, which will need some extra subsidies. There'll certainly be special cases of that sort, but in general, it's not going to be a big deal.
Okay, well, let's see if you're right. All eyes on March 29th and beyond. The Brexit saga continues. For the moment, I have to move on. So Caoimhe Archibald, Ruth Taillon and Gudgin, I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers.